Thanks, Lynn. Good afternoon, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you today. As Lynn just said, I'm Emma Roberts, and I'm from the RSPB in the United Kingdom. And for the last 3 years, I've held my current position, but I've actually been with the RSPB pre-children, pre-marriage. I was very young when I started in my career in conservation. I'm not a conservationist, I would say, because I'm not a scientist or an ornithologist, but I'm very passionate about nature and what we're doing for our future generations. Within the RSPB, I'm responsible for all aspects of volunteering, aiming to grow our organisational capacity and capability to achieve our ambitious Saving Nature 2030 strategy through and with our volunteering workforce. But my passion are people, communities, and how through action we can all make a difference. I started my career as a volunteer. I currently volunteer with 2 sports clubs. You can often find me on the side of a field at a weekend. And I'm already planning what I could do with my time when my kids leave home. What about you? I was going to ask you to stand up, but the organisation of those flip-down desks makes it really difficult, so I'm just going to ask you to raise your hands, if that's okay. I just want to understand who I've got in the audience. So I just want to see, if you want to put your hands up, if you've ever given your time voluntarily to an organisation or community activity. Oh, amazing. I'm speaking to the converted. Have you ever managed a group of volunteers or a single volunteer? Excellent. Do you have any dedicated volunteering specialism in your current organisation? So somebody like me who's responsible for volunteering. Oh, a few is getting less. And finally, do you think there are aspects of your work projects that would benefit from including more people? Oh, not quite 100%. I was thinking we'd get more people than that for that. But actually, we've got loads of experience and lots of potential in the room, which is great to know. So a little bit about the RSPB, for those of you who don't know. Volunteering has been core to the RSPB since 1889 when we were founded by some very formidable women. It was before suffrage, so women did not have the vote. But they gathered together to fight the use of egret feathers in the use of the millinery trade. That's hats for you and I. They started a very direct campaign and actually approached people from church. Anybody wearing a feather in a hat in church on a Sunday got a very formidable, quite vicious letter by Monday posted directly through their door. Very, very active campaigning. We've continued this trait. This picture is all men because women weren't allowed to work in this capacity in the early 1900s. But this is men out on the streets in London, again, campaigning against the use of plumes in hats. They were successful, by the way, and it was banned in the UK. It took quite a long time, but that's very typical of how us in nature conservation have to work. We have to be in it for the long game. We don't get very instant results very often. The RSPB now is one of the largest conservation charities in Europe with over 1 million members, which help with our funding for sure, and an annual income of over £190 million, which is about the same in euros these days. Physical volunteering on reserves was mainly the preserve of men, and that continued. And hides were provided and managed. They weren't quite what we'd expected to see today, and you can see that you weren't really easily accessible to the public there. You had to climb up a ladder, and that ladder was removed. You needed a license to visit one of our reserves, which is probably where the name comes from. This is a very early slide of Minsmere, and if anybody's ever birded in the UK, it's one of our flagship sites. I've never been, but it's one of our flagship sites and has great migratory species. Lynn's nodding violently there, so if ever you do get over, head over to Minsmere in Norfolk. But enough about the past. I want to look to where we are today. As you can see there from our stats, our volunteer numbers down slightly on 2023. These are stats for 2024. But actually what we're seeing is a rise in the amount of roles that each individual does for us. So there are more volunteer activities than there are volunteers. So people give us more than one thing. So we quite often have a fundraiser who also helps with admin, who might also do a work party. This is really valuable to us as an organisation. We only have to onboard them once. We only have to tell them about us once, so it does save us time. Volunteers help us achieve at scale and often at pace, both on and off reserves. When bee eaters nested in Norfolk in 2023, we were able, through local volunteer partnerships and landowner support, arrange 24-hour nest protection and then a visitor operation to enable safe sightings of these amazing species. And we did that within 2 working days. It was fantastic. And again, I never got to go and visit. I need to get over to Norfolk. But bee eaters are not native to the UK and don't often breed there. So that was a really important piece of work for us. They came back the following year. On top of this, 50% of our volunteers, at least, are members. So they support us financially. They're donors. They leave us things in their wills, so they're legators. They're campaigners. They're our voices in communities. And they're conservationists of the future. So as we can see there, volunteers move on to paid employment, sometimes with the RSPB, sometimes with other conservation charities, sometimes elsewhere. They might not want to stay in conservation. We might have put them off completely, but not many. But even after they've moved on, as we can see in 2024, 71 still volunteered their time. So they went and moved on to full-time employment, but still gave us some time back. That's invaluable. What are we facing internally? So that's where we are internally, but what do we know about the external landscape and how it's affecting volunteering? The social trends we should be aware of and how we should respond. It's no secret that we're in a little bit of turbulent times. The UK is post-Brexit, and I do apologise for my fellow countrymen for that vote. We're post-COVID. There's a cost of living crisis. There's climate change denial. We've got geopolitical division, and we've got a shocking rise in populism. People are potentially time poor, so we're having to work longer hours to make ends meet. We've got an ageing population, a sandwich generation. Those who traditionally retired at 55 to 60 and volunteered in previous generations are now caring for elderly parents and grandchildren. Thank you to my mum and dad, because they provided that service for me. Or they're still having to work to fund their retirements. Thinking about things more positively, though, because I am a glass-half-full person, nature and being outside is a huge motivating factor. This has increased during and since COVID. Social connection is very appealing to all ages. We need to capitalise this on if possible. This is my first in-person presentation to an audience since COVID, because I work mainly from home. Lynn said to me this morning that I look taller on screen. I probably do, because I'm only 4'11". How we get people outside and in nature, our volunteers tell us that's one of the most important things to them, the fact that they get to socially connect with others. So let's capitalise on that as organisations. We're also seeing a rise in people wanting to gain new skills, to have an impact and make a difference to their local and global environments, particularly around climate change and particularly in the under 35s. We're whizzing through, sorry. If I'm going too fast, I do apologise. But volunteer time remains globally significant. And as this data shows, $390 billion are contributed to national economies through volunteering. I can't even write the zeros in that figures. But volunteers can contribute to funding gaps that Lynn spoke about earlier. They can be part of the solution. But levels are falling. So levels of formal volunteering, this is an England graph actually, and I should make that clear. We are seeing dips in levels of formal volunteering, particularly in the over 65 age bracket. RSPB and other nature charities are bucking that trend, and I'd argue it's because we are able to provide in-person, outdoor opportunities for people to do stuff. Let's not forget that. It's really important and is arguably our USP. Again, there's also been a drop in satisfaction. So some satisfaction numbers have declined from 2019 compared to 2023. What I've just explained is that we're working in an increasingly challenging environment. But again, I do believe we are also part of that solution, because we can give people things that others don't. We can be a positive voice. What motivates people to give their time? What would motivate you to give your time? What motivates me to give up my time for sports? It's not because I'm saintly, although I would argue I probably deserve a halo at times. It's because my children benefit from me volunteering for 2 local sports clubs. They get something from it. Not all reasons have to be purely altruistic. They can be really selfish, and that's okay. So let's sell volunteering in both those ways. What you get as an organisation, what nature gets, and what does an individual or a group get. As we can see there, people still want to improve things as the main motivator and the cause. Nature is a great cause to hook people in. It's got a great marketing tool at your disposal. Why do people stop? So we do have a turnover. It's not low. Our volunteers turn over about 14% a year. And these are some of the reasons why people stop. Biggest thing is other things to do with their spare time. I can see people taking pictures of slides. I'm presuming we can share them. I don't know if we can share them. Yeah, thanks. So I can get them shared to everybody. And what are we competing with? We're not competing with each other. We're competing with Netflix. We're competing with Instagram, TikTok videos. You don't want to go down there because before you know it, you've wasted 2 hours of your day. So we're competing with things that are not even in our control. So we have to keep trying to sell against those kinds of things. What we do know is that 44% of people surveyed for time well spent were keen to combine volunteering with existing hobbies or activities. This is nature's USP. I put this picture in just because I really liked it. But I want to talk to you about other effects that we're seeing. And COVID had an impact, but these shifts have been going since pre-COVID. The same issues we saw beforehand. What COVID did was heighten the pace. So we are seeing generational shifts. RSPB's longest volunteer last year celebrated 65 years of volunteering with us as an organisation, which is freaking awesome. I cannot imagine being that dedicated to one place for 65 years. People don't work like that anymore, let alone give their time for free. So we're seeing shifts in our generations. Competition, as I said, not with each other, but other ways to spend time. There's perceived or real red tape, paperwork. I don't want to fill in forms. I don't want to have to do a risk assessment. I just want to turn up, and dig a ditch or fill a ditch, as Gary just mentioned earlier. And there's choice. We are surrounded by choice. Does Starbucks go across Europe? I haven't seen one in Latvia, which is it's not a good thing. It's a coffee shop, a bit like Costa or Cafe Nero. It's a coffee shop. And I put this slide in, and apologies, I should have checked whether it existed here. Just to ask the audience, does anybody know how many combinations of coffee you can get from a typical high street chain of coffees? Have a guess. 100? Any more than 100? 50. More than 50, more than 100? I'm going to tell you. There are 87, this is taken from the Starbucks website, so I'm presuming it's fact. 87,000 different combinations. That's exactly the same as what people can do with their time. There is so much choice out there, whether you join a club, whether you volunteer, whether you do something from home, whether you go out, whether you want to stay in your pajamas, whether you want to do something at 3 o'clock in the morning. We need to respond to that level of choice that people are facing today. But also we need to respond to the overwhelm that comes with that. I do not want to think about 87,000 choices of drink combination. I just want a latte. Sometimes with oat milk, that's about as far as I want to go. So you need to think about how you stand out from the crowd in this really busy, noisy, choice-filled environment. Bringing it back to the RSPB, what do our volunteers tell us? We conduct an annual survey across our staff and our volunteers, and we create a score. I've said I'm not a scientist. The stats behind this score blow my mind, and I love it, but I don't really understand it. It goes from -2 to +2, and the RSPB has a current score in 2024 of 1.03, slightly down on 2023, but it still remains a good place to volunteer. It uses a Gallup survey mechanism, which is known across HR industries, really. We also ask some wider questions about satisfaction. 8 in 10 of our volunteers are satisfied with us as an organisation, and we benchmark this against some wider organisations. There's 2 final years there, 2023 and 2024. We singled out remote workers, so anybody who doesn't have direct contact with the line manager, and we think that's brought the score down a little bit. We have a KPI, and would you recommend to a friend? There's no better marketing than word of mouth. So we want our volunteers to bring people along with them, to talk about us in a really positive way. When they're in the pub, when they're in the coffee, when they're at the school gates, whatever they're doing, that's a really important stat for us, and it's actually one of our key performance indicators. And we're just below 8 in 10, which for me is part of my job to see how we increase that. And again, a real focus on remote workers. We also wanted to know about well-being of our volunteers. As we've moved to hybrid working and working from home, well-being has become really important for us as an organisation, both mental and physical. What we can see here is that more people believe volunteering improves mental and physical health. There is less agreement in some of the other areas we ask. Arguably, the very low score in employment prospects could be attributed to the age demographic of our volunteers, because the majority are 55 plus and are not volunteering to get skills. So we have drilled down into that a little bit, and those under 35, that score goes back up again. It is a reminder, though, that volunteering is a two-way relationship. Place of where the volunteering happens has big influence on well-being, which is really illustrated by this slide. So everything in blue are people who volunteer from home, and our reserves, our places outside, are in green. But what are volunteers telling us? They're telling us they love it, basically. Most volunteers, even the 2 in 10 who wouldn't recommend us to a friend or are not satisfied, still give us really positive feedback. So read from that what you will. How do we manage our volunteers? So volunteers can do any role in the RSPB. We have no hard no's. If you come to me and say, Emma, I can do this, and I want to give you my time, it's my job to see if we can use your time in the most mercenary way possible. What we need to do is make sure you've got the skills, the capability, the time to get involved in that. So we do have fundraisers, electricians, trainers, chimney sweeps, IT experts, lawyers, tax specialists, firearms specialists, pilots, people who do work parties. The list goes on. There is no hard no in what you can do. We work with you and our insurers and our health and safety specialists to make sure that we can get that done. So volunteers go, I'm going to skim through these. I'm realizing I'm running. I thought I had 30 minutes, but I think that countdown started at 20. So we take our volunteers on a journey. And it's similar to any kind of staff employment journey. So you start at recruitment and you move through to when you finish, or don't. Sadly, some of our volunteers die before they leave us as an organisation. So we do have to talk about that as well. From that, we have volunteer line managers. There are about 750 people in the RSPB who are specifically responsible for managing those 13,500 volunteers, doing 17,000 roles, 1 million hours, 85% of our workforce. It's really impressive numbers. This is where I spend most of my time, is making sure our staff feel competent and capable to go and involve volunteers so that they don't say no, so that they do involve in lots of different places. Final bits that I want to talk to you about are 2 species projects that we work on. 1 species, and 1 reserves. I do have a video to play, and I am going to play. I know I'm desperately running out of time. Is that okay? But I do want to play this video because I want you to hear from other people, not just my dulcet Welsh tones. So I think if I just press next, does it go?
Well, I have tried this at home, I have practiced. Yeah. No, that's very silly.
Swifts are beautiful birds. They fly all the way from East Africa to the UK every year, over 3,000 miles of flying without stopping. So they're able to sleep, mate, eat on the wing. It's incredible, and I think their uniqueness is something that draws you to them. I think they're also important because their numbers have dropped by over 60% in the past 25 years. And if we don't do something about it, we're going to lose our sign of summer.
Well, I decided to be a swift champion because we have an existing colony where I live and watched them for the past few years. So I wanted to get involved. So we got to pick what we wanted to do, and I chose to create a Swift Street to bolster the numbers of homes for Swifts. And I've done that, and we've got 22 Swift boxes in my street now, which I'm delighted about. It's incredible. From my garden, I can see 4 of them, and if I go around the side, I can see 2 more. If I look out my bedroom window, I can see 2, and when I take my dog for a walk, I can see 6. So it's been great being involved with like-minded people, and I wasn't expecting that, and that was a big win.
I was a novice bird watcher, and as lots of people did, I spent some time outside in my garden and walking in the local area and spotted some little birds zooming over my house, and my friend told me they were swifts. It all started from there, really.
When you go out and connect with nature, and it could be you listening to a blackbird singing, or it could be that you're watching swifts dancing in the sky, or looking at a ladybug, or whatever it might be, you feel grounded, you feel secure again. You're reminded of where you've come from.
I suppose I have been overwhelmed, but I shouldn't be, because I live in such a friendly community. Everybody pulls together. Put a message on the group that we have on the lane, and was overwhelmed with so many requests, enough that we've got 105 boxes up on the lane now.
We know we're in an environmental, climate and biodiversity crisis. There's no getting away from that. And every day I feel like I wake up to more species in trouble, more environments, quite literally sometimes on fire. And it's hard to get out of bed and feel optimistic and hopeful, but then you come to events like this where you see communities driven to do something, and that's progress.
So the Swift Cities in Manchester are just one of our species volunteering networks. And as you can see here, this is where they exist. There's over 600 volunteers working on that network, contributing to 26 projects in 33 different species. I'm just going to talk a little bit. Sorry, I've got some really pretty slides of people. But our reserve volunteers, so just want to tell you about these, and then I promise I'll stop and take questions. RSPB reserves are the gems of what we do as an organisation. We own about 220, and we have 8,000 volunteers who contribute to those reserves. And they do anything and everything you can imagine on site. They're so important to managing that habitat. They're really important to influencing stakeholders, landowners. We just heard about peat bog. We've got a great story about peat, blanket bog, peatland in Lake Fernway, where actually it was volunteers that convinced the local farmers around them, not RSPB staff, once they started working on that. And we've actually built a network. I don't have data, but I know it's a lot of restored peat bog in that area. They fly drones. This is one of my favourite things that I've seen a volunteer do. So we've got a pilot who flies a drone, who monitors hen harrier nests to prevent disturbance, so there's no walking. They help us achieve everything that we do on reserve. And most importantly for me, as a people person, they engage with the visitors who attend our sites. They inspire other people to care and to do something about nature, whether that's a small thing or a big thing. My best RSPB experience was with a volunteer who showed me a crested tit, which is a tiny, it's like my spirit animal, tiny little bird in Scotland with this amazing plume on the back of his head. It's by far one of the best days I've ever had in work. The second was when I helped to deliver a lamb with a volunteer shepherd. Both of those things are volunteering things that I would not have experienced in my day job. I am going to stop. I'm not going to play this. Can I skip it? I'm going to stop there. I don't want to play it because I have got another video. But there's no doubt in my mind, RSPB volunteers have proven that ordinary people can do extraordinary things. My job is now to continue to enable our volunteers to fly together. Any questions?
Thank you so much. Emma, I could listen to that all day. That's just amazing. And I hope it inspires anybody who has not yet volunteered to do anything to go out there and volunteer. OK, have we got anything on Menti? Great. I've got one quick question. RSPB's changed itself. It's remorphed in a way. It's gone very much from being protection of birds to protection of nature. Mm-hmm. Did that change in any way the volunteer community?
It faced some backlash from volunteers, particularly those who saw themselves as bird experts. But no, not really. What it's done is enabled us to grow and work in partnership with volunteers who are experts elsewhere. So we do a lot with people like bug life, plant life, butterfly conservation, and bring the skills together. Birds don't exist in isolation. They need trees and habitats to live in, and those trees feed insects and all those other things.
Okay, so bit of backlash, but you got over it by
small, very
by
small.
communicating.
Volunteers can be difficult. I'm not pretending that they can't be. They are very openly willing to challenge us as an organisation, and I do have to go to some difficult meetings when we make policy change, actually. But that's great. That's what it should be. We should be challenged.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Okay, so from Mentimeter, thank you for the question. There's often an assumption that it requires a lot of funding to manage a volunteer programme, and it might be cheaper to employ experts rather than teach new people again and again. Good question.
Yeah. It's a good question. There's a few myths in there. It's not free. Managing volunteers is not free, so let's not pretend it is. I'm employed, I'm paid, I'm not a volunteer member of staff, and my team are employed. We pay expenses, we pay for training, we pay for equipment, we put volunteers on chainsaw courses, we give them steel toe cap boots. It comes at a cost. Our ROI is 3 in 1. And sometimes 4 to 1, depending. So actually, for every pound we spend on volunteers, we get £3 to £4 back in time. We need to value the donation of time as much as we value the donation of money. But it isn't free. It does require management. The myth, I think, there is that it's cheaper to employ experts. I'd argue that the RSPB has got some of the finest experts within its workforce who give us their time for free. And we don't have to employ them again and again. We have longevity. If we treat our volunteers well, if we get them doing the right job with the right support, they remain with us or move on to the next thing. So there's a few things in there that I think are a bit myth-busting, and I'm happy to, whoever had that conversation, I'm happy to help.
Okay, what communication channels do you use to connect with volunteers? How do you connect with them?
Various ways. We know our volunteers prefer to hear face-to-face. They want to hear from their manager, just like I do. If I have an email from a manager or a Teams meeting with my manager, I'm more likely to respond. I've got a great manager. And that's true of our volunteers. We also have an online newsletter that goes out once a month. We have a management system called Assemble, which brings volunteers to us that we can post news stories in. And they talk to each other. So we do have some things that come back to us, you absolutely know. One volunteers talk to the next volunteers, talk to the next volunteer, and they come back to us. But yeah, mostly online, but we have at least one event a year with our chief exec. We have one event, an awards ceremony with our president and our chair of trustees. But we try to communicate in a way that works for them, and that's mostly the best way is through their manager. Because humans respond to humans.
And I think RSPB were one of the first organisations really to go big time into volunteering as a mechanism for delivery.
It's where we started. It's our foundation.
And I think there's a lot of other organisations now that are using that same model, the wildlife trusts, etc. They incorporate your model. So
definitely.
So this is the gold standard. And if you want to hear more about volunteering, Emma is going to be in the afternoon session.
I'm here in the afternoon,
on
yes.
Are you here tomorrow?
I'm here tomorrow, yeah. I'm out doing some volunteering tomorrow with you. And I just want to say, I'm actually here on my sabbatical from the RSPB, but I have got some time left to spend. If anybody wants me to come and do some work with them or their teams about volunteer development. I've got about 12 days left. That's up for grabs. Open to bids if you want to. I can do that online, by the way, but if you want me to come and visit, I'd love to. I'm going to give some to LatViaNature, but I'm happy to spend time if anybody needs it as well.
Well, on that fantastic offer, please, again, join me in thanking Emma for that amazing run-through on volunteers.